Welcome to episode 260 of the All the Book Show, the official podcast of the David A. Howe Public Library. We talk book news, author news, and literary news. I'm Eric Mickles.
I'm Nick Gunning.
We're not really talking about any of those things today, though.
We're not? I guess it's
author
not
news,
news.
Book news, literary news.
Well, our segment today is a special library book club episode where Jessica
That's
Wieszczyk...
book news, then.
Yeah, Jessica Wieszczyk is going to join us for our first ever Star Trek book club. We're talking about Diane Duane's Dark Mirror, a little foray for the Next Generation cast into the Mirror Universe, something that the show never did. And Diane is a pretty prolific author in her own right, so we get a little into her background. We had a good time with it. What's new with you? Anything exciting going down?
Whoa!
Huh. I mean, that was exciting.
What's
Perked me
new,
up.
Pussycat?
Oh, yeah.
Anything exciting?
Yeah. Anything new you want to report? You still playing the guitar?
Yeah, I'm still practicing. I mean, it's bad. I put it down for a while.
Yeah.
So, like, I had to pick it back up, and I was like a novice all over again, having to, I mean, I've never gone beyond novice, but it was kind of like, I gotta remember how to switch from C to G. What's the F chord?
Yeah.
What's the F minor chord?
Yep.
But it's getting better. And then I was like, oh, right, these are the scales and stuff. So, if I can ever go back to a world where I could take physical, like in less, I guess now it's all digital. Maybe I should just look into that.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah,
but,
you probably could, especially now that you have the basics. You know,
yeah.
You probably could take the next level digitally. What a time to be alive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, nothing else too crazy.
Okay. Same for me.
Yeah.
I've got an aunt in town celebrating her 80th birthday, so I want to give a special birthday shout out to Aunt Nancy. Happy birthday, 80 years. My son said, "Hey, that's the same age as Ringo Starr." And I felt like now I've known that I've succeeded as a parent.
He knows how old Ringo Starr is.
Yes, because Ringo Starr just had a big 80th birthday, much like Aunt Nancy. So I don't think Aunt Nancy's party is going to be quite as star-studded as Ringo's was, but should be a good time. I've never heard her play the drums either, but we'll find out. We'll find out how that goes. What do you say we get into a little bookmark?
First thing I'll say is that a couple days ago I watched The Age of Innocence, Martin Scorsese film starring
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Winona Ryder.
Good cast.
This was on the Criterion Channel.
Okay.
It's based on the novel, the 1920 novel by Edith Wharton, which I've never read.
But I like how you said it. You said it with a little panache.
Thank you.
I like that. Wharton.
I think anybody who thinks like a Scorsese fan was like, oh, I love Goodfellas. Oh, I love Taxi Driver. Oh, I love Gangs of New York. Like, they'd be a little surprised by The Age of Innocence.
Yeah.
Because it is very much like a literary movie.
Yeah, interesting.
It's very much just like these actors performing. A lot of the camera and background is just about how elegant and ridiculous this kind of lifestyle is, where everything is an excess and everything is silver and gold. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, I can't really compare it to the novel, but it's a good movie, even though it's not normally my type of jam. It's just about this guy deciding he might want to be with another woman, but he can't because it is an age of innocence.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That'll get you every time.
Yes. Anyways, watch that. Still reading Wheels of Time 5.
Okay.
And
how's your chapter a day situation? Are you
not
back?
great.
You're
not good.
You're not doing it?
Not on track.
Okay.
I also read a graphic novel called Astonishing X-Men Storm, and this is by Eric Jerome Dickey.
Oh, interesting.
Came out around 2006.
It's always interesting when like a best-selling author is like, I'll try my hand at comics. Thinking of like Jodi Picoult doing Wonder Woman, or Brad Meltzer picking up Green Arrow, or Ta-Nehisi Coates with Black Panther or Captain America.
Yeah.
How did it work? How did it translate from novelist to comic book author?
He was fine. Like, the story is fine and everything. It's just kind of retconning the relationships. This is what Marvel put out to explain their connection with Storm and Black Panther getting married in the comics around this time, right before Civil War. So it's kind of a retcon on their history, but if you don't care about continuity, then the story's fine.
Okay.
So it's only when you really care about continuity that things get kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're interested in Storm, Black Panther, the two of them together, the possibilities that they might be together or have interactions in this Disney owns the X-Men universe, might be worth picking up.
Or
I don't know
if you've read all of Eric Jerome Dickey's other stuff. I guess
I don't know.
Here's the place to go.
Yeah.
I was productive this week. There were several books that have been on my shelf for a long time, or books that I've been working through, and I was like, this is the week. So I read Jesse Stone, Night and Day. There's only one more Robert Parker penned Jesse Stone book after this. So I'm reaching the end. I've got a lot of Spencer books, but now I've read all of Parker's Sonny Randall. I've only got one more Jesse Stone. And those are really the series that I like the best. So I'm kind of sad to see the Parker era end. And this was interesting because Parker discontinued Sonny Randall after Spare Change. And she and Jesse Stone had been like crossing over. And now Sonny and some of her supporting characters, it seemed like Parker was setting up that Sonny and Spike and a few characters from the Sonny Randall series would be recurring characters in Jesse Stone, now that they'd kind of discontinued that series. But there's only one book after this, so it's hard to know what Parker would have done. But both series were eventually picked up by other authors. So Jesse Stone has gone through several authors now. Reed Farrell Coleman, Michael Brandis, and now Mike Lupica writes that. And then Mike Lupica also has done 2 Sonny Randall books. And he's a big YA author. That's usually what I associate Lupica with. He writes those sports books, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I haven't read those yet, but it's sad to say that it's the penultimate Robert Parker Jesse Stone. I read finished Camino Winds by John Grisham.
Yay! And
this was kind of middle of the road because
Aww.
Camino Island was all about stolen manuscripts that are they're being chased around. It's a very like white collar kind of plot, and so it made sense that the setting was like a bookstore in Florida and all out in the sun. That worked really well. This one was like a weird hybrid of a traditional Grisham story and the Camino Island setting, because what it is, the Bruce Cable, who's the bookstore owner, who was the character in the first book, has a friend on the island who's a former lawyer who writes like legal thrillers, basically. And a hurricane comes, that writer dies, and they figure out that his unpublished book was about pharmaceutical companies pumping patients who are comatose, who don't have any response, who are just a beating heart, pumping them full of pharmaceuticals that keeps them alive longer than they naturally would be to get more money out of Medicaid and the families and things. Once it switches to that plot full time, it just stops being anything to do with Camino Island, and then it's like a weird hybrid between the Camino Island, sunny, like beachy mystery kind of vibe, and a really kind of a dark Grisham story. So by the end, I was like just ready to be done. So a little disappointed on that. I read Roots, Radicals, and Rockers by Billy Bragg. So this is about like the skiffle craze that swept England, really, right before the Beatles hit the scene. Right before rock and roll really took its roots. It's an interesting time in music history because it's this transition between like, New Orleans style jazz and like, big band kind of standards into more of a grungy sound. And skiffle was a kind of music that really anyone can play because it's like, washboards and percussion and that sort of thing. So skiffle wasn't like the main thing for very long, but it was a major, major influence on Lennon and McCartney and all that. So I was interested to read the book, but the problem was it was all fact without a lot of narration, Like I described it as if you were watching a documentary and it was just a series of clip, 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 clip without any sort of person being like, you see, at this time in the 1960s, everyone was. So it was just like, it was too tightly focused, I think, to be a very enjoyable read. And then finally, I read a book called Naomi by Brian Michael Bendis. This is a new graphic novel series. This was called Naomi Season 1, and it's about a girl in a small town who starts to realize that maybe the mysteries of her past lie outside of this world. So it's a good slow burn mystery, and I'm looking forward to the next bit. I'm currently reading A Stab in the Dark by Lawrence Block. This is book 4 in his Matthew Scudder series. So Matt Scudder is like a former cop who is now sort of an unlicensed PI. People bring him problems, and he looks into the problems if he feels like it. But I'm liking that so far. It's been a good series. It started really strong. The movie Walk Among the Tombstones with Liam Neeson a few years back.
Oh yeah, that's supposed to be a good one.
It is a good one, and it's based on, I think, book 10 in this series. So I'm not there yet, but I did enjoy that movie as well. As far as what I watched, on Netflix I watched An Innocent Man based on John Grisham's only nonfiction book about a couple of murders that the wrong person was convicted and spent time in jail in Ada, Oklahoma, and it looks at the system that put them there and how that happened and how it continues to happen. So it was a dark and heavy watch. Mm-hmm. Well, that's it for me.
Okay.
So I told you, I pounded through a lot of stuff this week. So
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Should we take a look at some book news?
Book news.
Look into the future to see what it proves. It's time for book news.
I want to mention to you first that the Booker Prize long list has been announced. I know every morning, Eric, you getting up, you're thumbing through the newspaper trying to find the Booker long list. Well, your wait is over. Here they are.
Finally.
The list was chosen from 160.
Sick of that long list.
I know. 162 novels published in the UK or Ireland between October 1st, 2019 and September 30th, 2020. The Booker Prize for Fiction is open to writers of any nationality writing in English and published in the UK or Ireland. The 13 novels are The New Wilderness by Diane Cook, The Mournable Body by Tasidi Danjaramba, Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi, Who They Was by Gabrielle Krause, The Mirror in the Light by Hilary Mantel, A Paragon by Colin McCann, The Shadow King by Maza McGinty, Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, and that's been a bestseller over here quite a bit too.
The babysitter one.
Shuggie Bane by Douglas Stewart, Real Life by Brandon Taylor, Redhead by the Side of the Road by Ann Tyler, Love and Other Thought Experiments by Sophie Ward, How Much of These Hills is Gold by C. Pam Zhang. So that's the long list now. We'll be back when they narrow it down to a short list, and we'll, of course, let you know the winner. As you may or may not remember, last year's Booker Prize was a bit of a contentious thing because they chose 2 books, something that they don't do. And one of the books they chose was the Testaments, I want to say, the sequel to Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So there was a lot of criticism.
That was lame.
A lot of criticism directed towards that decision. So we'll see how it plays out again this year. But what's on the bestseller list right now? Maybe some of the books I just mentioned.
Well, The Guardians at number 10 by John Grisham. Colin Post, a lawyer and Episcopal minister, antagonizes some ruthless killers. He takes on a wrongful conviction case. Number 9 is American Dirt by Janine Cummings. Bookseller flees Mexico for the United States with her son while pursued by the head of a drug cartel. Number 8, Peace Talks by Jim Butcher, the 16th book in the Dresden series. Chicago's only professional wizard tries to keep the peace during a summit of the supernatural nations of the world. Number 7 is new this week's Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. Cora Sabino finds herself caught between her estranged whistleblower father and the extraterrestrials have been living here for decades. So what?
Huh. Okay. That was number 1?
No, what? That was only number 7.
Oh, okay. Oh, you stopped. The way you stopped made me think, okay, what is that one about?
Cora Sabino finds herself caught between her estranged whistleblower father and the extraterrestrials who have been living here for decades.
No, I guess I heard that. I was surprised by that synopsis. I thought there was more. But
That's it.
All right. I'm with you.
Number 6, 28 Summers by Ellen Hildebrand. A relationship that started in 1993 between Mallory Blessings and Jake McLeod comes to light while she is on deathbed and his wife runs for president. Number 5, The Guest List by Lucy Foley. A wedding between a TV star and a magazine publisher on an island off the coast of Ireland turns deadly.
Oh.
Number 4, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. The lives of twin sisters who run away from the Southern Black community at age 16 diverge as one returns and the other takes on different racial identity, but their fates intertwine. Number 3, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. In a quiet town on the North Carolina coast in 1969, a young woman who survived alone in the marsh becomes a murder suspect. Number 2, The Order, Danielle Silva, 20th book in the Gabriel Allen series. The art restorer and spy cuts his family's vacation short to investigate whether Pope Paul the 8th was murdered. Nope, the 7th was murdered.
Okay. All right.
Number 1, new this week, Near Dark by Brad Thor. 19th book in the Scott Havarth series. With the bounty on his head, Havarth makes an alliance with a Norwegian intelligent operative.
Not a fan of Brad Thor.
Hey, man.
Speaking of things I'm not a big fan of, you mentioned Where the Crawdads Sing again. That's going to be one of our book club picks here at the David A. Howe Public Library.
Wahoo!
That's going to be a book club pick that we're going to do outside on the front lawn. Part of the reason why we're doing that one is because, well, I mean, when it was all the rage, we wanted to, and all the books were constantly checked out, so never could we have gotten enough books to fill a book club. But now, since it's one that everybody's read, it's an easy one that we can do for book club, and then people can come whether they, are currently placing holds on things or not, because likely the people who would want to come to that book club have already read Where the Crawdads Sing. So we're going to be discussing that out on the front lawn with, prepackaged snacks and masks and social distance. So you can join us for a book club here at the David A. Howe Public Library. Before that, though, of course, we're doing a book club on Dark Mirror by Diane Duane. I asked
take that, crawdads.
I asked Eric if he wanted to join us on this little book club, and he politely declined, with regrets. And that's
Wow.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I think,
all right.
I don't think you would have enjoyed the book.
That might be.
I don't think you would have. So I do think you made the right decision. But I knew somebody who would, and she was all too eager to sign up to do our first Star Trek book club. Jessica Wieszczyk is the auditorium coordinator at the David A. Howe.
Come on down.
She's also no, she's not. She's just a minute. She'll be here. She's also one of the Star Trek fans on staff. It's me, it's Jessica, and it's Malik. Just the three of us. So Jess joined me for this book club, and we thought we'd do a little pre-discussion here on the All the Book Show. So let's get to it.
All the Books presents Author Spotlight.
Jessica, welcome back to the All the Book Show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm all right. This month for our book club, this is the first time we've ever done a Star Trek book. So we're doing Dark Mirror by Diane Duane. Now, have you ever read a Star Trek book before?
I have not.
Okay. Your Star Trek fandom does go back a ways.
Yes, it does.
What was the first Star Trek you remember seeing?
Next Gen.
Oh, really?
I caught it on DVD. As back when I did the Netflix DVD.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Rentals. So I just ended up doing the whole series.
Nice. All right. And so is that the only one you've seen all the way through, the Next Gen?
Nope. I've seen Voyager, DS9, a little bit of Enterprise. I caught that when my husband was watching it and then got into it a little bit.
Okay.
But I haven't really seen much of the original series. Which is bad.
Yeah, I was always such a fan of the original movies, and I hadn't really sat down and watched through the whole original series up until a few years ago. My wife and I just kind of pounded through the whole thing, and it was much better than I expected it to be. Honestly, I thought it was going to be just so cheesy that it wasn't really enjoyable. But no, I was pleasantly surprised by it. Are you a fan of the movies?
Once again, haven't seen much of the original Star Trek ones, but I love the Next Gen
First
movies.
Contact and all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
That's actually my favorite.
All right. Well, yeah. That's First Contact is fun, but it's also so different from anything else that happens. It's like, let's make a Bruce Willis movie starring the crew of Star Trek. So
Next Gen,
right?
right?
So that's kind of jarring. So let's talk a little bit about this book. So I got a little background on the author here. Diane Duane is, she's an incredibly prolific author. She's a novelist and she's a screenwriter. She has a really long-running series called The Young Wizards, which is like a junior level or YA fantasy series that is pretty popular. And actually, we have quite a few of those on Overdrive if anybody's interested. So she does a lot of original work and then also writes within established universes. So she has novels from Marvel, things like Spider-Man or X-Men. She novelized episodes of Sequest. She wrote a lot of Tom Clancy's Net Force. She did XCOM, many, many more. She's also a screenwriter. She wrote a lot for Hanna-Barbera, Disney. She wrote for Star Trek Next Gen, she wrote some of the episodes. She wrote for Batman the Animated Series, Gargoyles the Animated Series, so a very prolific author. And even within the Star Trek world, she has kind of a unique place because she has this series called Star Trek Rihansu, which is it's a Romulan series. And they don't often do a lot of subsets within the novels because the novels are pretty strict about what you're allowed to do. For a long time, when we interviewed David Dvorkin and we interviewed Mel Gilden, both who wrote several stories in the original series and in Next Gen. And it sounds like they had a pretty tight rein on what you could and couldn't do. So it was pretty rare to be able to have original characters that carried over from novel to novel. And I know that's something that would sort of occasionally frustrate the authors because they'd have this really cool character and they'd want to use it again in a future novel. And it would be like, no. You can't bring one character from one book to the next. So Diane Duane, for whatever reason, was able to do that and has this little Romulan set, which is kind of cool. I actually haven't read those, but I have read a few of her other books. So she has probably her most famous Star Trek book is one that's called Spock's World. and it's one we have in our collection. It's almost Tolkien-esque in how it takes like Star Trek history, because it is like a super deep dive into like Spock and Vulcans and their history from like thousands of years in the past. So I don't like that one. Are you a fantasy? I mean, do you read fantasy or anything like that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I go back and forth between like fantasy, sci-fi, thrillers, stuff like that.
Sometimes I just get hung up on the world building. You know, when there's so much that you have to learn, like just right off the bat to understand what's going on. And for me, that was like Spock's world all the way. It was just so dense that it was kind of hard to enjoy. It really felt more like reading a history book. You know, so. But she's got one called Doctor's Orders, where Dr. McCoy is put in charge of the Enterprise. That's a fun read. Doesn't make any sense why the Doctor would ever be in charge of the Enterprise, but that's just one of those things where you just sort of have to roll with it.
Right.
And she also has one called The Wounded Sky, which is an original series book that I haven't read. Her 2 next-gen novels are Intellivore and one called Dark Mirror, which is the subject of our first ever Star Trek book club. And this was your first Star Trek book ever. So what did you think? Did you like it?
I did. I guess because I'm familiar with the characters and stuff watching the Next Gen series, so it made it enjoyable.
Okay. Well, I always enjoy the Mirror Universe stuff. I mean, there's one episode in the original series, and some of the later series like Enterprise or Discovery or Deep Space Nine pick up the Mirror Universe stuff a little bit more. But Next Gen really never did anything with it. They don't really have an equivalent of a Mirror episode.
No.
I think as close as you'd get would be the one Yesterday's Enterprise. Do you remember that one? Where they where they sort of travel into a dark alternate timeline, but it's not really the Mirror Universe. But that's a great episode though.
That was good.
Let me give you the synopsis of this book from Goodreads, and we'll try not to spoil things because the book club is going to be on August 18th, so you still have time to come and join us, but this is just the general publisher's description. 100 years ago, 4 crew members of the USS Enterprise crossed the dimensional barrier and found a mirror image of their own universe, populated by nightmare duplicates of their shipmates. This is where Spock had the goatee, which is like now a thing. Every evil character has to have a goatee.
Right.
Barely able to escape with their lives, they returned, thankful that the accident which had brought them there could not be duplicated, or so they thought. Bum, bum, bum. But now the scientists of that universe have found a doorway into our universe. Their plan is to destroy from within, to replace the Federation starship with one of their own. Their victims are the crew of the USS Enterprise NC-1701D, who now find themselves engaged in combat against the most savage enemies they've ever encountered. Themselves. Pretty intense synopsis there.
Right. The book itself was sometimes hard to follow.
Uh-huh.
And not just with the Star Trek lingo. So I ended up doing a lot of the audiobook, which was even better because John Delancey read it, who plays Q.
Yes. Yeah.
So that made it even more enjoyable for me.
You know, I know what you mean, because I was occasionally confused about which version of the characters that we were talking about. Because we had... Which characters is it? It's Picard, it's Troy, and Geordi? Is it just the 3?
Geordi.
Okay.
I think those are just the 3.
And they find themselves on the Mirror Enterprise and are trying to sort of undo these problems. But occasionally I was like, wait, is this Mirror Picard? Is this real Picard?
Yeah.
Because sometimes in the conversations, it was a little hard to follow. I think especially in the audiobook, because the audiobook is a little abridged, so it's cutting out a lot of lead up to what's happening in a conversation. So that was a part that I was a little thrown now and then. Did you find that, or did you not have that issue?
Yeah, no, it did, because it was sometimes hard to follow if one was acting like the other and stuff like that. So
Yeah. And I think ultimately I was most intrigued by the Troy character, like the evil Troy versus like nice, calm Troy. You don't really associate her with like the big, like strong, tough, conniving kind of character. So yeah, but seeing her like Mirror, which is like the extreme of that, I thought was pretty funny. Like how intense Mirror Troy was, how just like dark and evil and conniving she was. So I got a kick out of that.
The one that was feared amongst all the rest of them.
Yeah, it's such a funny twist to like go there and have Troy be the one that everybody's like, oh my gosh, Troy's coming. It's just funny. It's just so unusual.
Not what we're used to.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that. But Deanna Troi, do you have a favorite character from Next Gen? Because Troy is mine, and everybody says I'm crazy, but Troy's always my favorite on that show. But
I like Data, and I like Q as the guest star. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
I've got the whole DVD collection of all the Q episodes throughout all the Star Trek.
Yep. Yeah. So I listened to part of the audiobook too. It was kind of funny to have John Delancey reading it because it kept feeling like Q is watching over what's going on. So I would recommend the audiobook. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, Troy is always a character that I really like, and she's not featured prominently in books that often. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised that, like, not only did she have something to do, but she was really, in a lot of ways, like the antagonist of this book. You know, like
Yeah, she's pretty prominent.
Yeah, she's kind of the main villain. I feel like the gist of the book was really more about Picard coming to terms with the idea that even though this mirror Picard is not him, they still share some characteristics that makes him feel like, do I have this in me? Do I have this darkness in me? And
I have the possibility to become this.
Exactly. So I thought that was kind of I think that's been done before, looking at the darkness within a character. I don't think that's anything particularly new, but I did kind of like the way this handled it.
Yeah.
There's a point where on the Mirror Enterprise, it gets so confusing trying to figure out where we are and who's where. But on the Mirror Enterprise, main real Picard goes into Mirror Picard's office and sees his book collection, and it is like shockingly similar to Picard's own collection. And I did like that because I thought that was a good way to bring out some of those similarities, because that really hits our Picard hard, because he sees that and thinks, well, obviously we share a lot in common, and this one just happens to be evil. So I think he really had trouble grappling with that, and I don't know that he ever really did.
No, I agree that it's the same thing, especially your book collections or something like that are very that's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
And so to have the similarities shows that it freaks him out even more.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to dismiss that this altering universe, everybody's just evil. That's all. This is just the evil versions, and it's a different thing. But I think, yes, what you're saying here is exactly right. It's so personal. It's such a quiet, personal touch that they share the same taste in books that really, I think, more than anything else he sees, more than the stuff with what happened with the Crushers and all that, I feel like that book collection he just can't shake, because it's just undeniable that there's that connection there.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, I think, in a book like this, because you know that the mirror universe is not going to overtake the main universe.
Right.
So right away, some of the suspense, I think, is gone, because you just have to kind of go for the ride, because the villains aren't going to succeed.
Yeah, the general outcome's already there.
Yeah. Yeah. But I did feel like, still, even with that, it was a fun ride.
Yeah.
I feel like the best Star Trek books are the ones that feel like they could have been a really good episode of the series. And I think that's what this one is,
Yeah.
I
was actually just going to say that, because it read I read I was reading an episode of the show.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, it's very contained. A lot of times the books, because they're not tied down with the constraints of a TV budget, they can do all sorts of things that you'd never get to see in the series. And so that is cool. It's cool to explore that, but that also doesn't feel like an episode so much. But this one, because they're just relegated to one version of the Enterprise or the other, really did have that sort of tight, bottled feel that a lot of the episodes have. Did the audiobook have the dolphin character?
Yes.
That was a little far for me. What did you think of that?
It was interesting to listen to it in the audiobook, the way they had.
Yeah.
The way he read it and stuff, because it was very not exactly how they read it, how they said in the book. It was very high pitched and very echoey.
Yeah.
So
there's a character. Do you remember the character's name? I don't remember now.
Wee.
Oh, okay. Wee. All right, that makes sense. Something a dolphin could say, so that makes sense. It's a sentient dolphin who is just a member of the crew, who's he's in some sort of apparatus, right? He's got some almost in equivalent of a diving suit or something along those lines.
Yeah, either that or he has to be in this water tank or something.
Right. So that I felt was a little too much of a stretch.
A little different.
Yeah.
The particular character didn't really fit.
Yeah. I feel like most of the characters were pretty sidelined in this. I don't really feel like Riker or Data really had much to do, and I think we got more mirror Beverly Crusher than real Crusher.
Right.
Which is fine. I think it's better when they sort of pick a character that they want to focus on, rather than trying to write everybody equal scenes. I think that bogs it down a little bit.
It was hard enough to go back and forth between the three that were mirror. Could you imagine the entire crew?
But I sort of felt like even within those three, Geordi didn't have much going on.
No.
And it was
he was stuck down fixing something else.
Yeah. Were they going for a bit of a romance with him and that character? Was it Eileen, I think was her name?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, her mirror counterpart we see a lot, and then we eventually see her on the real Enterprise, and it seems like they're doing like a little hint with romance there. Did you pick that up that, or you don't think so?
No, I think you're right. Now that I'm thinking back to it.
Which that's kind of like a long running joke I feel like on Next Gen, that Geordi just can't catch a break when it comes to romance.
No, there was a couple different. Yeah.
Every couple of seasons, Geordi's falling in love with a hologram of somebody who
doesn't
say
like
that
it.
Or something.
It was the hologram of the one doctor or the creator
or whoever
of
it was. Yeah.
Leah Brahms.
Yeah, so I guess that was true to form, that Geordi has a romantic misfire even in the mirror universe. So that was pretty funny. I feel like I would rank this on the higher side of Star Trek books. I feel like she did a good job capturing the characters, and I feel like she picked up enough threads from the original series episode to tie in there, because we do find out a little bit about the fate of Mirror Spock and Mirror Kirk, which is left a little ambiguous at the end of the original. And you've never seen the original episode, right?
No.
Yeah, in that one, Kirk is talking to Mirror Spock and is saying, like, you are in a position to actually make a positive change in this universe. Like, you've got to try to do that. And that's just how they leave it. Like, Kirk makes a plea to Mirror Spock to try to, like, right the course of their world. And then you just never hear anything about that anymore. And so I like that she picked up that thread. In William Shatner's Star Trek novels, he's got a trilogy that's a mirror universe trilogy, and that all deals a lot with him, like, teaming up again with that Mirror Spock, and I love those books. So, like, William Shatner, I think, has 9 or 10 Star Trek books that are all like one continuous series, and called the Shatnerverse is what people usually refer to him as. They're all fun. They're pretty self-indulgent, where Kirk is basically just a superhero in all of these. But it still makes for a pretty good trilogy. But yeah, that's called the Mirror Universe trilogy by William Shatner. I appreciated that she picked up that thread in this book and tied it into the original Mirror episode. And it, like I said, to me, it did feel like it kind of filled that gap of not having any Mirror stories happening within the Next Gen crew.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick up some more Star Trek books because it was good.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about this for weeks, that, like, while we've been in quarantine and like limiting our going out and everything, I have just had basically a book block. And so I feel like, of what I've been reading is, I've read a lot of Star Trek books. Books because the characters. So, like, right away, you've got kind of a foothold into the world, and they're quick and they're easy and they're fun. And, the best of them feel, like episodes from the classic series. So I always feel like that's a good way to break if you're having trouble starting a book, or, are just, like, right now, I've just not been in the zone to do a lot of heavy thinking, because I feel like I'm consumed with heavy thinking about everything else happening in the world.
True.
Yeah. So for me, that's been my go-to, because it really, it's quick and it shakes you out of it. So, I've liked that a lot. But yeah, we have tons in the collection, because I can't bear when we get donations that we don't have, I can't help but add them to the collection. So, yes, we do have quite a few. I made a list of some of my favorites here. Do you think you'd stick with Next Gen, Jess, if you were going to go and read more Star Trek?
I would probably at least start with Next Gen.
Yeah.
Just because of the familiarity, and then probably branch out from there.
Yeah. I have a list here of some of my favorites, and there's so many more than this, but these are some of the top ones I have for each series. So my favorite Next Gen novel is one called Amzadi, and it starts in the future, where an older Will Riker is just distraught about Deanna Troi having died at some point in the past. And he gets this idea of using the Guardian of Forever, which is something from the original series, a time travel mechanism, to go back and, like, stop what happened to Deanna. And that's the frame of this story. So it's like a time travel adventure, and it focuses a lot on the Riker-Troi dynamic, which I always like. So that's my favorite Next Gen book. Classic series, I would say Vulcan's Glory by D.C. Fontana, or The Entropy Effect by Vonda McIntyre. Entropy Effect is another time travel story, because I'm a sucker for those. Deep Space Nine, I would recommend Beyond the Stars by Stephen Barnes. That's based on an episode, which I guess you've seen if you've seen all of Deep Space Nine. I've never seen the episode, but it's one where the characters it's set in the 50s, and they're working at a science fiction magazine.
Yes.
How's the episode? Because the book is great.
Yeah, I thought it was neat.
The book is Stephen Barnes is a pretty well-respected sci-fi author. We've talked a little bit about this on the show, but NAACP award-winning author, and, pretty well-respected in the sci-fi community. And he really leans heavy into like the racial injustice of the 50s, which we were kind of surprised to find in a Star Trek book, but he just does it so well. So that's the Deep Space Nine book I'd recommend. I think even if you've seen the episode, it's a lot more fleshed out than you see on the screen. For Voyager, which is my favorite, I can't escape the like original Kirk movies. I feel like those 6 movies are my absolute favorite of all Star Trek. But Voyager was the series that I watched. My whole dorm floor would watch Voyager. It was on at midnight, and we would watch it like every night. I know.
Nice.
That tells you how young we were, because we could watch something at midnight and then just get up and go to class the next day. But yeah, that's a great one. Spirit Walk by Christy Golden. It's a 2-book series. It's set right after the finale of Voyager, so that's a lot of fun. For Enterprise, I would recommend By the Book by Dean Wesley Smith. It's a first contact story and also has half the crew playing like an RPG type game. It's just a fun little parallel between the two.
That sounds neat.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. And you said you've only seen a few. I haven't seen all of Enterprise either.
Yeah, I caught just a couple when my husband was watching it.
I always enjoy it when I watch it. It's never been like, I must sit down and watch all of Enterprise. And truthfully, I haven't seen much of Deep Space Nine either. Maybe you're a better Star Trek fan than me. I don't know.
Each one takes me so long to get into because I was such a Next Gen fan, and so we decided to go on to the other ones. And so like we started Deep Space Nine, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm not going to get into it. I don't know these people. Yeah. Like this is going to take me so long. And a few episodes in, I'm like, all right, never mind, we're good.
Yeah,
it happened again with Voyager.
Voyager, I've always loved. So that one hooked me really quickly. Deep Space Nine is one that I think I've seen scattered episodes, and Hillary and I recently have watched like maybe the first 10 episodes since we've been quarantined. But it is a very jarring jump from Next Gen.
And it's different just because it's not so much set on a ship. It's on the space station. Yeah. And so there's a lot of Next Gen tie-ins with O'Brien.
Sure.
And then halfway through Worf comes in and it's a regular.
Yeah. So, I don't think I've ever seen an episode with Worf. So maybe.
Yeah, he's out halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Like the entire series, I should say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I always intend to. But let's see. What else do I got here? Well, Discovery. So Discovery, you haven't got into at all yet, right?
Not yet.
My favorite of that book series so far has been one called Fear Itself by James Swallow. So where are you in your Star Trek watching right now? Then are you picking up anything new, or you've finished with Voyager and you're just waiting?
I'm just waiting. I see the Discovery DVDs at the library a lot, and I'm like, maybe I should. One of these days I'll get them. Kind of thing.
Are you more anxious to watch Picard?
If I was to choose between the two of them, probably Picard.
Okay.
Just because of that connection.
Yeah. All right. Well, the book that we were discussing again for the book club this week is Dark Mirror by Diane Duane. That's going to be on the 18th in the afternoon. And what we're doing for this book club, I mean, we have copies that have been available down at the curbside pickup location here in the auditorium. But for this book club, we're gonna focus on this book, but we're just gonna have sort of a general Star Trek talk, basically like we did just now. Only if you want to come to that, you can participate. So if you haven't read the book but you want to join us for the book club, come on down, because we're gonna talk about all things Star Trek and just kind of hang out with masks and prepackaged snacks, right, Jess?
Exactly.
All right. Well, Jess, thanks for joining us here again on the All the Book Show.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you think, Eric? Did you make the right decision in skipping this book club?
What was that one Star Trek book I read?
Yes. You know what? We should talk about that, because when we did our episode when Picard was coming out, you read the Next Gen manga, and we forgot to talk about it on the podcast. So we can talk about it right now. Were you a fan of that manga?
I was a fan of one or two of the stories in there, but Next Gen is not the series that you put into a manga.
No, I think you're right. There's 3 volumes of the Kirk era, and that's pretty good. But the Next Gen one didn't work quite as well. There was a Wesley Crusher story that was weirdly good. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was the one that I liked.
Yeah. It was a fun audiobook, though. I know you're not like a big audiobook fan, but I think you would have enjoyed John Delancey.
Who told you?
reading of this Mirror Universe story. But
hey, when did this book come out?
I feel like 90s, but I'm not sure.
I mean, it must have been after David Brin's Uplift series, but like the whole dolphin.
Oh yeah,
the whole sentient dolphin thing.
Yes,
I mean that's Uplift stuff.
Well,
So-
I kind of wondered because Diane Duane, I mean, she has her own YA fantasy series, and I kind of wondered if that was something that was coming out of something else that she wrote, but I wasn't sure. 93 is when the book came out.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting. Were there any scenes where she's like, I sense you don't like that I'm evil?
Well, it was kind of funny. It was like they had to all, like, real Deanna Troi was telling everybody, like, just think about, like, poetry or think about, like, really strong emotions to, like, block her out. And so there were several times where regular Picard was with Mere Deanna, and he had to just, like, keep really aggressively quoting poetry in his head, and she was like, what is going on? What are you doing? You know, so it was kind of funny. It was kind
That's
of funny.
silly. Yes.
Yes.
The only way to elicit emotion in the next gen universe, think
Yeah.
of the poetry you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, but I do think the dolphin thing, and in that Young Wizard series she has, there are dolphin wizards, so I gotta think that was just kind of a carryover from there. But
She's just a dolphin. She's gotta get dolphins in wherever she's reading.
it did.
Whatever she's writing.
No, it was a pretty good time, and it was kind of nice to see like the mirror versions of Next Gen. I know there's a whole graphic novel series that picks up later, and that might work a little better, like in graphic novel format. I think it'll be a good one to discuss in the book club because you can talk a lot about the characters.
Does it fit into continuity anywhere?
Well, I don't think it does because, I mean, first of all, it kind of tells the aftermath of the original series episodes with Kirk and Spock, so he talks a little bit about that. But Deep Space Nine, like right after this, did a whole thing with the Mirror Universe, and nothing that really happens in here gels with what they did in Deep Space Nine. Right. So I don't really think that it does, but you know, it just as a standalone novel, I think it still worked pretty well. It was kind of cool that. Mm-hmm. In the old episodes, the Mirror Spock is the one that has the most, I don't know, the most potential to like do good. And in this one, it was Worf, because in the Mirror Universe, Klingons were basically enslaved, but like they had sort of maintained their honor and integrity. And Worf was the character who kind of helped them and was the one who you leave the novel thinking like, well, maybe at least Mirror Worf will be okay. I thought that was an interesting choice to have Worf be that person, you know?
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see if people enjoy the book club, which is happening on the 18th, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. Who knows?
Ooh.
I feel like I was remiss in not pointing out that you're wearing a pretty sick Mr. Sinister shirt from the X-Men.
I am.
I don't know if he doesn't top my list, but that shirt is fire, so hats off.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The origin of this shirt purchase is I got a really awesome X-Men shirt that had kind of the 90s art style of all the characters. Everybody's on it. Big people from Apocalypse is there in the background. Mystique is there. Sabretooth, Juggernaut, the Sentinel, like all the X-Men, all these villains, and Mr. Sinister is not on the shirt. Oh. And it seems like whoever did it has something against Sinister because I can't think of a reason why he's not there.
Weird.
So I had to just go and find a solo Mr. Sinister shirt.
And you did. You did.
I sure did.
Respect. Yeah. All right, what do you want to talk about next week?
Gosh, I don't know. Are we doing our Shakespeare episode or our dogs episode?
Boy, that's a good question. Shakespeare or dogs? It's like apples to apples, right?
Is there a good dog story that's a interpretation of Shakespeare?
I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I have to believe that Wishbone has done some Shakespeare work.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, the 12th Night or something.
Hopefully not Romeo and Juliet. I feel like that would be...
Oh, I'm sure that's the thing. Is that Wishbone was so weird that it always had Wishbone in the lead, but then the romance was always still human. So it was always just this woman being like, my dear, and like, I'm a dog.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it was always such a strange oversight, but they never just had another like trained dog being like, my dear. It was always it was like the Muppets, but not as cute.
Right, less cute. Well, I think on that note, we'll sign off, leaving our listeners to ponder
that note.
Wishbone's failed dog-human romance. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the All the Book Show. Thanks to Jessica Wieszczyk. Jess, come back anytime. We'll talk more Star Trek, and we'll see you next week.